message classifications, transport rules, and journaling. Let's start with mail tips. Mail tips are similar to the policy tips that we looked at in the module on data loss prevention, in that they are messages that are displayed to users while they are composing an email in Outlook or Outlook on the web. While policy tips are warnings about specific policy violations, the goal of mail tips is to alert a user to mistakes or problems with the email they're writing so they can correct their mistake before they try to send the email message. A mail tip just might prevent the user from being embarrassed by a mistake or frustrated if an email they send gets rejected or bounced back to them. Mail tips only work for Outlook clients and Outlook on the web because they rely on Exchange web services. Any other client misses out. The default configuration for mail tips, which is configured at the organizational level, is that mail tips are enabled, group metrics are enabled, which I'll explain shortly, the large audience threshold is set to 25, mailbox sourced mail tips are also enabled. These will warn about issues with specific mailboxes, such as an out-of-office message being enabled or the mailbox being full. And mail tips for external recipients are disabled by default. If you turn that one on, users are warned when an email they're sending will go to external recipients. That's not always a useful warning, especially for companies that do a lot of external communications anyway. So it's turned off by default. Group metrics form part of the mail tips feature. Exchange calculates the size of a group's membership, including any groups that are nested within that group. The value is then stamped on the group object using the MS Exchange Group Member Count attribute. Now you can't see that attribute unless you open up ADSI Edit to view the object. The process that performs the calculations runs in the background, continually but throttled for performance impact. So it's not unusual for the group metrics to be slightly out of date. So let's go into the Globomantics environment and have a look at configuring mail tips. As a quick demonstration of mail tips, let's have a look at what happens when Dave tries to compose an email to the all staff group. He sees a warning that the all staff group contains about 101 recipients. That message is a mail tip. 101 recipients is more than the large audience threshold for the organization, which is set to 25, and so users will see that warning. It's the type of warning that would prevent them from accidentally composing a message to 1,000 people when they only really intended to send it to maybe 10 people. Mail tips will also warn about potential issues with individual mailboxes. So in this case, Robin Leathers currently has an out-of-office message applied. So this mail tip will stop someone from maybe sending an urgent email to someone who's not actually at work or available at the time. In the case of the help desk mailbox for Globomantics, a mail tip appears to advise people that help desk emails are responded to within 24 hours, so for any urgent matters, they should call extension 5555. So we know that the email to the all staff group had a mail tip because it was going to a large audience, and the email to Robin Leathers had a mail tip because she's out of office. But what about this help desk mail tip? Well, in the properties of the mailbox, which we can see in the Exchange Admin Center, there is an option to configure a mail tip. So you can simply enter the text message that you want to display as the mail tip to anyone who's sending messages to that mailbox, and they'll begin seeing it in Outlook and Outlook on the web. In this video, we'll look at message classifications. Message classifications are labels that are applied to messages to describe the intended use or audience of the message. Classifications can be applied by Exchange when an attachment has been removed from the message, when the message has been redirected from its original addressed recipient, or when the message was delivered over a secure partner connector. Those three classification labels can only be applied by Exchange and not by users. Users can also apply message classifications that are configured for their use. Think about use cases like marking an email as company confidential. A few caveats to be aware of though. First, message classifications are not enforced. Marking an email as company confidential is just a suggestion or a visual clue that you're providing to the recipients of your message so that they don't mistakenly believe that an email they've received is free to share with others. As you'll see shortly though, you can apply some controls based on message classifications by using transport rules. Classifications are also stripped from the message headers when an email leaves the organization, so they're not useful for communicating with external recipients. Classifications also do not encrypt or protect the contents of email. For that, you should use Information Rights Management, which protects emails and attachments both inside and outside of the organization, and IRM is covered in another course in this series. Finally, the classification definitions need to be manually deployed to Outlook clients. Outlook on the web users get to use them without any extra work, but Outlook clients need the classifications exported to an XML file using a script that Microsoft provides, and then distributed to each computer, probably using group policy or a logon script, and configuring a registry path to point to the location of the file. It's a bit cumbersome, and of course, you'll need to redistribute the file anytime the classifications change. Well, Globomantics wants to put some control in the hands of users to allow them to label confidential information. So our systems engineer Dave needs to create a message classification for them. Let's go into the Globomantics environment and see how that's done. To create a message classification, we use the new message classification commandlet. Classifications are given a name, which is visible only to administrators, a display name, which is visible to users, and then a description for both the sender and the recipient. And those descriptions can be different. So in Outlook Web App, when Dave is composing an email message, he has the option to set permissions on the email and mark it as company confidential. And as you can see, the sender message that was configured on the message classification is what is shown to Dave as the sender. Now in a global exchange organization, it's possible that those sender descriptions and recipient descriptions will need to be configured in different languages for different parts of the world. When you have a classification that already exists, such as the company confidential classification, you can add additional display names, sender descriptions and recipient descriptions for multiple locales. And that process can be repeated for as many locales as you have users around the world. Now let's move on to transport rules. Transport rules are also known as mail-flow rules in Exchange. Transport rules can be used to target messages that match specific conditions and then apply actions to them. An important point to keep in mind is that transport rules impact an entire organization. Yes, you can narrow the scope of the rule with its criteria, but a mistake can easily mean that you accidentally block every email being sent in the organization. So just proceed with caution whenever you're using transport rules. The transport rule conditions can be message characteristics such as the sender, recipient, or message contents such as text in the subject or body. And relevant to the topic of this course, compliance, is that transport rules can also look at message classifications. You can see a full list of the transport rule conditions on TechNet, and it's well worth your time actually to read through them to gain an understanding of how flexible and powerful transport rules can be. The type of actions you can apply to messages with transport rules includes forwarding or redirecting the message, rejecting or deleting the message, adding other recipients to the message, applying rights management or encrypting the message, increasing or decreasing the spam score, and setting message headers. Again, the full list is on TechNet, and it is worth spending a few minutes reading through that. Transport rules are pretty flexible and can be used for all kinds of situations like creating ethical walls within the company or holding messages for approval by a moderator. You can also append email disclaimers by using transport rules and, quite relevant to this module, taking action on classified messages, for example by blocking confidential email from being sent to external recipients. In the last demo, we saw how a message classification for confidential email messages was created. So now Dave, the systems engineer at Globomantics, wants to add a transport rule to detect confidential emails and prevent them from being sent outside the company. So let's go into the demo environment and look at configuring transport rules. In the Exchange Admin Center in the Mailflow section, we can see the transport rules that already exist in this organization. Many of these were set up during the data loss prevention module of this course. So let's go ahead and create a new rule. So let's set some conditions for this rule. The rule should be applied if the recipient is located outside the organization. And we want to add some more criteria to that. So just click the More Options link and we get this Add Condition button so that multiple conditions can be used. And we're looking for message properties that include the classification of company confidential. The action that should be performed is to block the message, and we'll send back an explanation to the sender saying that company confidential emails can't be sent to external recipients. We'll go ahead and save that change. And let's see what happens now if Dave tries to send this confidential email to an external recipient. So after a few moments, we get a non-delivery report for that email. And there it is, there's the message, company confidential emails can't be sent to external recipients. So that transport rule has blocked Dave's test message. For the final compliance feature of this module, let's talk about journaling. Journaling is the feature that allows a copy of emails sent and received within the organization to be made to another location, whether that be a journal mailbox in the same organization or an external address for a separate hosted journaling and archiving service. There are two types of journaling that you can use in Exchange 2016. Standard journaling is configured at the mailbox database level. All messages sent or received by mailboxes hosted on that database will be journaled. Premium journaling is configured as a series of rules, similar to transport rules, and they can be applied in a slightly more targeted manner. You can specify that only specific recipients in the organization be journaled, or only journal emails sent outside the organization. Journaled messages are stored in a special message format known as a journal report. The journal report contains some metadata about the message, and also a copy of the original message is attached to it. A few concerns to be aware of with journaling. First, journaling only captures new emails sent or received after you turn it on. It's not going to go back and journal all of the existing email already in people's mailboxes. Now, as a sneaky little workaround, it's actually possible for users who can both access the same mailbox to communicate with each other through things like draft emails that are never actually sent. Therefore, they won't be journaled. That's something you'd rely on litigation hold to catch and not journaling. Because the journal reports contain a copy of the original message, you also need to be careful to secure the mailbox that emails are journaled to, so that unauthorized people can't read the messages or even delete them. Performance is also an issue, especially in high volume environments. The journal mailbox might receive so much email that it needs a dedicated database on a dedicated storage volume just to provide enough performance without impacting other databases. And along similar lines, storing many hundreds or even thousands of gigabytes of journaled email can get rather expensive, which is why some enterprises combine Exchange journaling with a separate email archiving system that continually removes the contents from the journal mailbox and stores them in that separate archiving system. If for some reason the journal mailbox becomes unavailable, the journal reports will start to queue on the Exchange 2016 mailbox servers. Again, if it's a high volume environment, those queues could build up very, very quickly and start to cause a problem. There is an option to set an alternative journal mailbox for the organization. You can configure this by running the set transport config commandlet to set the journaling report NDR2 property. Now, that's not an automatic solution that you should just go ahead and configure in every case. If the primary journal mailbox is unavailable, and you've configured an alternate journal mailbox, and it too is unavailable, the journal reports won't queue anymore, they'll just be dropped and lost forever. Globomantics would like to use journaling to capture emails sent to or from the finance department. So let's go into the Globomantics environment and look at configuring journaling. As a little bit of preparation here, let's create a new mailbox that is going to be used as the journal mailbox. Now, because Dave is going to need access to that mailbox, we'll also grant Dave permission to open it. In the Exchange Admin Center, there's two places that journaling can be configured. The first is the standard journaling that can be configured on a per database basis. Let's just have a quick look at that. You can see that in the properties of the mailbox, under maintenance, there is a journal recipient that can be specified for each database. Now, because the Globomantics objective is to only journal emails that are being sent to or from the finance department, this database level journaling is not going to do the job. We can go back to the compliance management section and look at setting up a journal rule. Configure the journaling address to send the reports to. Let's call this rule finance department. If the message is sent to or received from a specific user or group, and we're going to journal all messages, not just internal or external messages. Now, one point I want to make here is that when a journaling rule is configured for a group, any member of that group that sends or receives a message will be journaled. It doesn't have to be the group itself that is receiving the message. Let's test the rule by going back to Dave's mailbox. We can see he now has access to the journaling mailbox. And to test the journaling rule, he's just going to send an email to one of the finance members. And we can see that after a few moments, the journal rule has copied that message to the journaling mailbox. So there's the metadata for the journaling report, and then also the message itself is attached. In this module, we looked at several compliance features of Exchange 2016 that can be used independently or in combination to achieve various objectives. That included mail tips, message classifications, transport rules, and journaling. And our Globomantics systems engineer Dave was able to strengthen the company's compliance position by configuring a classification for confidential email, enforcing that classification with a transport rule, and journaling email communications between the finance department and any other senders or recipients. In the next and final module of this course, we're going to look at auditing.